No, Steve here.
And Larson.
Yeah, welcome back to Going In Rock Countout, the only top 10 professional wrestling countdown list that can be found here on YouTube.com.
I'm sure others exist somewhere.
/Steve and Larson. We have friends who do other top 10 wrestling lists.
I was just being kind of jokey about it. I'm sure they exist
Cultaholic,
somewhere else.
What Culture,
exactly.
Brian Zane.
They're all over the place.
They're all over the place.
And they all do wonderful jobs doing those countdown lists.
Probably better than us.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
But we like ours the best. Anyways, because they make us money. They make us money.
There's a difference between liking them and needing them.
Okay, well, there you go. We need ours the most.
But we don't like ours. We like theirs more than ours.
Anyways, wow, what a creative blunder that intro was, Larson. And what a happy coincidence, because this episode is all about creative blunders. Now, lately, there has been a mass exodus from the WWE.
Well, two people have left.
Two people have left, but for the same reason.
Percolated that there is some discontent.
Yep.
About the creative in WWE locker room.
Yes, that's right.
We've heard Sasha Banks talk about it publicly on the Sam Roberts show. We heard Revival unhappy. We've heard, who else was unhappy?
Dean Ambrose.
Well, I mean, he's left.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike Kanellis. Maria Kanellis.
A lot of these people have very good reasons to be discontent with their creative, Larson, but they wouldn't be the first to experience crap creative in the WWE. So we went back and fished out 10 prime examples, only the most prime examples.
Only the worst creative blunders.
Only the worst creative blunders for the WWE, because for every good thing they do, there's like 5 bad things they do.
Again, much like us.
Oh, well, we're in good company if we're in the WWE then. Anyways, let's kick this off with number 10.
10.
Fake wrestlers.
Hey, that's not Scott Hall.
But
they tried to convince us that it was almost kind of Scott Hall.
That's not Scott Hall.
Why would they put forth? So Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, they leave WWE for guaranteed monies and WCW.
Guaranteed money.
And Vince McMahon has the gall, the audacity to put new people in those gimmicks and try kind of like half-assed convince us they're the same people, while at the same time being completely transparent with the fact that they're not the same people.
Okay, let me ask you this, because there is a previous fake wrestler. Now, it's one thing to take, so for like example, Sin Cara. There have been at least 2 people that have portrayed the Sin Cara character, a little bit different, dude under a mask, Suicide over there in TNA.
Oh, there's like 15 different Suicides.
There's a ton of them. One of the more high-profile fake wrestlers, though, came during a storyline in 1994.
Yeah, Undertaker.
Fake Undertaker, portrayed, I believe, by Primetime
Brian Lee. Yes.
Brian Lee, exactly.
Real Undertaker got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they thought it was a great idea to have Primetime Brian Lee portray Undertaker with like a Phantom of the Opera type mask on to cover his identity, because he looks nothing like Mark Calloway.
Right.
That didn't stop him in this scenario. And then so that led to a match between Undertaker and Undertaker, main event of SummerSlam 94. Terrible match, lasted like 8 minutes. Real Undertaker wins.
But here's the thing.
But the precedent was set. I guess they thought it was enough of a success that they could put forward the idea that Razor Ramon and Diesel came back to WWE after showing up in WCW.
So here's the deal. I kind of understand looking back at 1994.
Yeah.
Undertaker's on the shelf. Let's kick off this storyline where an imposter comes in and then they have to fight. And you could say there might have been, because of the supernatural aspect of the Undertaker, maybe this was sort of, I mean, they never really explained, like even in storyline, who the heck this fake guy was. I don't think. Maybe they did. I don't know. In this case, though, 2 high-profile wrestlers who were, when people were into Diesel, they were, let's face it, they were into Kevin Nash. Mm-hmm. That's what they cared about. They didn't care about the facade.
They didn't care about the gimmick. They cared about the man behind the gimmick, not the truck, the person driving the truck.
In the case of Razor Ramon, granted, there was more character there than in, say, just Scott Hall, but Scott Hall made that character. He even brought the Scarface accent to the table.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon didn't realize that it was something else. I'm not sure how cultured Vince McMahon is in cinema, in Brian De Palma films, Larson.
Not sure.
But evidently not very.
Something tells me he might have seen Scarface at one point.
He just didn't realize.
Maybe.
That could be. In any event, upon leaving the WWF in the summer of 1996, WWF maybe embittered by this. We never really got to really watch a couple of little shoot interviews.
You remember when Hogan and Macho Man left? They had the Huckster and the Nacho Man
as a way to poke at them. Yeah.
So the precedent has been set. They will do this out of spite.
That's a good point. I do think in this case, so when the fake Undertaker showed up, I don't think there was any idea. I don't think there was any like, oh, hey, this is fake Undertaker. You know, we could possibly roll with this guy for the rest of his days.
Yeah.
There was Undertaker's coming back at some point. This will set up a cool match. Might be a cool storyline.
Well, cool for 1994.
Right, for 1994, which wrestling was hardly that in 1994. No. In this case, it really does feel like if the people behind the gimmicks got over, if they were reintroduced, they would have kept using them. That's what it really felt. There was no indication that this had a shelf life beyond what was acceptable by the fans.
Yeah.
Which immediately was none of it.
Well, I mean, it's blatantly obvious it wasn't Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, so why would people buy into it?
And they tried to have it both ways.
Yeah.
So upon debuting in September of 1996, the fake Razor Ramon, brought to the company by heel JR, which was just completely not appropriate for him. He shows up, and Gorilla Monsoon is on commentary, and I think was it like Kevin Kelly? Was who?
Maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it was Kevin Kelly on commentary.
Kevin Kelly, yeah.
They were both like, this clearly is not the real
Hall.
Razor Ramon.
Yeah, well, I mean, when Diesel shows up, says, no, that's, I think, was it Gorilla says, that's clearly not Kevin Nash.
Right. So that was put forward. However, over the next few weeks, as they were competing in matches, they stopped. The facade was originally sort of, brought out into the open. It was like, hey, this isn't the real thing. But then that stopped. And they just sort of let it go. They just let it happen. Like, okay, well, they're here now. These are our gimmicks. We own them.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to use them.
I wonder part of it, and this is speculation, and I don't know if there's any truth behind any of it, but I'll say it nonetheless because that's what we do here.
Of course. Based on speculation.
So when Scott Hall showed up on WCW, what did he say?
You know who I am, and you don't know why I'm here.
In kind of the Razor Ramon accent.
Oh, in the very Razor Ramon accent, yeah.
And so the implication was, hi, I'm not Scott Hall. It's, hi, I'm Razor Ramon. I came here from WWF.
WCW got sued for
yes,
that, yeah.
And I wonder if part of the reason WWE did this, or WWF at the time did this, was to say, here, this is the intellectual property right here that they're violating. Mm-hmm. I mean, I doubt that they thought about that much, but...
yeah, I mean...
it's like here, these are the characters they're trying to portray on a competing product. Mm-hmm. These are our characters. They should not be able to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that might have been part of it. I think just pure unthinking spite is probably...
that's tops on the list because they have a vast tape library they can take to the courtroom and say, hey, this is the characters they were portraying. They went to WCW and they were doing more of the same thing, that they can't do that.
I like the idea that instead of consulting copyright lawyers or just his own attorneys there at Titan Sports, hey, are we on solid ground? And he's like, we got to get these characters out there so that they continue to be ours.
Yeah.
We're on solid legal ground. Lawyers probably just like, you don't need to do that. We own the trademarks.
Yeah, but I really want to stick it to him.
This is a really bad way to stick it to them.
You think Scott Hall will be anything without Razor Ramon? No, people love Razor Ramon. They don't care about Scott Hall.
My creation. And so yeah, it didn't last long though. Actually, I'll be honest with you, it
lasted like 6 months,
way longer than it should have. So they lasted actually from late September of 1996. They lasted all the way to January 97.
Yeah,
that's
about 4
September,
months.
October, November, December, January. That's like 3.5 months that they lasted, which is pretty impressive.
It's way too long. It's about a month and a half. Way too long.
It really was. Then they got kicked over in. So we sort of understood from a previous episode of this we did. USWA at the time was kind of WWE's version of NXT.
Yeah, kind of a developmental.
And so then after that, after the Rumble, Rick Bognar, the guy who portrayed Scott Hall, Razor Ramon,
Razor Ramon.
He was eliminated. He had the quickest, and I think maybe first elimination, either the quickest or the first elimination in that year's Rumble. Mm-hmm. And then, Big Daddy, the Diesel,
Glenn Jacobs,
Kane.
He
was like the last legally eliminated man in the 1997 Rumble. That was the year Stone
Cold won, yes.
Yeah. And so they ended up going back down to USWA as those characters for about 3 months till April. Then they had a loser leaves town match, which I believe resulted in both losers leaving the town. Both participants leaving the town.
Yeah, because Rick Bognar went over to Japan and wrestled there.
He left, and then Diesel was not seen again. Glenn Jacobs, I think, came back the next week as a character, I believe, called Doomsday, which they then transitioned into Kane.
By the end of 97, or by the summer of 97.
Right.
He was Kane, yeah.
And now he's a big-time politician there.
Well, he's the mayor of Knox County in Tennessee.
Knox County, Tennessee. Big things for fake Diesel.
I will say that Kane probably had a better jackknife powerbomb than Kevin Nash did, though.
Yeah, I agree with that. He was actually a better Diesel than real Diesel.
Yeah, he had more moves.
Yeah. But he didn't have Kevin Nash's cooler than cool attitude.
No.
Nobody really has that. Very few people.
Definitely not in 1996.
Are as cool as Kevin Nash.
I can think of a couple today.
Well, Finn Balor.
Yeah.
For sure.
Maybe Aleister Black.
Yeah. But Nash is probably still top 5 in the wrestling industry.
Yeah, it could be.
Very cool
Could
guy.
be.
Number 9.
9.
Bray Wyatt, man.
So Bray made his main roster debut along with the rest of the Wyatt family July 8th, 2012. And you could tell they instantly had high hopes for these characters because they were featured in prominent roles on Raw, given a lot of TV time. Bray got to do a lot of promos from his rocking chair, feuding with CM Punk and Daniel Bryan early on. In fact, the Wyatt family brought Daniel Bryan into the family for a while. Of course, there was that incredible moment where Daniel Bryan frees himself from the mind control of Bray Wyatt in that cage match on Raw.
That was great.
Yeah, it was great. Unzips his jumpsuit, has his ring gear underneath. Fantastic moment. He also got concussed during that match.
Yeah, immediately when they debuted, just as a fan watching, you could tell this is something big.
It was something different, too.
Yeah.
It was different. It felt a lot more interesting than a lot of the other creative that was going on at the time. And it felt like it could really go somewhere if done correctly.
Yeah.
And early on, it seemed like they're doing the steps for that to happen because Bray Wyatt beat Daniel Bryan at the Rumble. The year Daniel Bryan wasn't even in the Rumble. Of course, Daniel Bryan eventually made his way to the main event of WrestleMania 30 anyways. Bray and the Wyatt family interfered in John Cena's WWE title match against Randy Orton at the Rumble that year, costing him the match, setting up the program between John Cena and Bray Wyatt. And it was a really interesting feud.
Yeah.
Leading into WrestleMania 30 because Bray was like, John Cena's a huge fraud. There's a monster within him that I'm going to unleash, essentially. And that story played out wonderfully during the match at WrestleMania 30 up until the finish.
Yeah.
And there's this one moment where Cena has a chair in his hand, and he has to make the decision whether he's going to win the battle or win the war. Whether he wins the match via chair.
Well, Cena wins everything.
Yeah, that's what ultimately happened. Instead, he won everything.
Battle and war.
Yeah, battle and war. And it really did a disservice to Bray as a character. He should have broken Cena at that moment. That way, Bray could have lost the match, but his overall message would have had a lot more merit.
It would have been Cena's most devastating win
Yes.
ever. It should have
Yes.
been. He should have come out the next night and been like, I got the win, but there was nothing satisfying about
Yeah.
it. He made me question who I am. And then he just move on. Like he's a broken man. He has to find his redemption somewhere else or whatever. Maybe you come back
This
around
is
to it
what
later
happened
on.
because the way the feud progressed. So Bray loses his first match clean, which sucked. So they had a cage match the following pay-per-view, which Bray won.
Yeah.
And that's when there was I think the creepy kid came and
Oh,
started
yeah,
singing.
I remember that, yeah.
I remember that the Ambrose feud. No, I think it was the Cena one. He won that match. And then you could have had it progress that way still, except have Bray win the Mania match, then have Cena lose at the following pay-per-view in the cage match, and that's rock bottom for Cena.
Yeah.
So not only is he like morally defeated, psychologically weakened, he has been physically defeated too.
Yeah.
And then the next one is a last man standing match at the following pay-per-view, which Cena won. You can still have the story progress the same. It's okay to have Cena ultimately come out and head the feud, but Cena, as we said several times about Bray Wyatt, if you feud with Bray, you should come out of that feud as a changed man.
Yes.
And that would be an interesting way to add some more dimension to John Cena's character, having feud with Bray Wyatt. It would have been huge for Bray to get a couple huge wins over John Cena and potentially alter the course of John Cena's career. Would have been massive. Instead, none of that happened.
No.
John Cena beat him in the last man standing match, and John Cena was the same, Bray Wyatt was the same. And it's kind of been rinse and repeat throughout Bray Wyatt's career.
Yeah.
He'll get into a feud, ultimately lose it, and it seemed like the feud didn't matter.
The problem is, with Bray Wyatt especially, you need very concrete motivation for him to be effective. And far too often, I would say for every one thing they do right with him, there are 5 feuds that he has that just have no direction, no motivation. And I understand that wrestling boils down to who wins and who loses, good guy versus bad guy. But with Bray Wyatt, you have the opportunity to do something much more complex and much more interesting and deal with all these other themes. And you know, the shades of gray,
yes,
and the fact that he has supernatural powers. You really need to explore that more.
Well, the one time they did, it manifested itself in him just projecting images of flies and stuff in the ring. So he had a decent feud with Dean Ambrose through the summer of, I think, 2013. Is my math right? I think so. Between Mania 30 and 31. That was a decent feud where he actually came out on top.
Yeah.
And I think that was all to kind of build him up to have a feud against Undertaker going to WrestleMania 31. And Undertaker, I believe, made one appearance in advance of this match.
That was terrible, yeah.
Maybe one appearance.
It was all just Bray posing with, like, Undertaker museum items.
I'm the new face of fear.
Yeah.
That was his thing, which is a great catchphrase. Yeah.
He would, like, hang out with coffins, with caskets, rather. He'd hang out with, like, urns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was having to carry this whole thing.
Yeah.
And then the match wasn't very good, and then he lost.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Taker
just lost last year. The luster's already off this win streak. Just have Bray win.
Like, at that point, just transition Undertaker to MMA old guy.
Yeah.
And then let Bray Wyatt be the new Undertaker.
Yeah.
Like the supernatural guy who everybody's scared of.
Yeah. Totally. But no, that didn't happen. And then he kind of went in and out of various feuds for the next year or so. And then during the whole Triple H Roman feud, they had that one moment where the crowd popped. Triple H with that WWE title. Bray comes in with the family, rubs his finger across that belt. Man.
Yeah.
I still get goosebumps thinking about it.
I know. It was great.
That was such a great moment. Bray, though, apparently hurt his back. He didn't compete at the following Mania. Instead, the Wyatt family got absolutely buried by The Rock and John Cena.
It was terrible.
He did finally win the title at Elimination Chamber 2017, only to lose it to boring face Randall Orton at Mania. At this point, Bray is supposed to be imbued with satanic powers, which manifested themselves by, projecting images that are supposed to be gross on the ring.
Yeah, but it
was just mostly bugs.
They also did that cool House of Horrors match.
Well, I would say it was cool. It was more interesting than their Mania match.
I loved it. That was great.
Anyways, that feud didn't really end very well because Bray was shipped over to Raw before their blow-off, the House of Horrors match.
Yeah,
at least Bray won that match.
That's right.
Thanks to Jinder Mahal. Then he feuded with Finn Balor that summer. They were supposed to have a blow-off at TLC that year, but there was some illness going through the locker room. Bray got it. That's when they were doing the Sister Abigail persona for Bray. That never came to happen, and they just kind of forgot about that feud. He feuded with Matt Hardy for a while before they formed a tag team, and he's basically been off TV ever since Matt went to rehab his back injuries.
Yeah.
There, I will contend, still, there is a lot of money left on the table with Bray Wyatt. If they had handled his creative properly from the very beginning, he would be a huge star right now.
Yeah. I agree. We did get to see him recently on the Edge and Christian show in a very, very funny segment where he takes up a second career as a midwife. It's pretty hilarious. But yeah, I agree with you. I think there's lots of money to be made with Bray Wyatt. Still to this day, I think that his personality is so strong and the character is so strong that he can still withstand all this and still be, a viable contender if they want to start pushing him as such. So yeah. Moving on, number 8. The Brawl for All. Hey,
Now
I have a great idea. So we have this industry that's predicated on
Predetermined fights.
predetermined outcomes to fights.
The choreographed fights.
So why don't we take that aspect of it, which is crucial to maintaining the facade of all these characters, and let's just take that away. Let's have them actually go in there and fight. But we also want to dictate who's going to win these real fights.
Or at least who's ultimately going to win the last fight.
Right, exactly.
It's all the idea, or primarily the idea of one Vince Russo. Mm-hmm. Brawl for All was his brainchild.
True. Yeah, it lasted from June 29th, 1998 to August 24th of 98. And then the winner of Brawl for All, which was a tournament with real boxing-style matches.
Yeah, there's rounds. Rounds were scored.
Was it MMA or boxing?
I think it was more so boxing.
Because, I mean, MMA is like,
yeah,
it's boxing
it
plus
was
stuff.
set. Yeah, I know. I think it was just supposed to be like an amalgam. It was supposed to be fighting, I guess.
It's brawling. It was just they were supposed to brawl.
Yeah, but then you don't have Dan Severn. Oh, Dan Severn was supposed to be in the beginning. Wasn't. Ken Shamrock wasn't in it.
So, I mean, the crazy thing is, like, and I don't know if Ken Shamrock, like, could you imagine if the final ended up being Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn?
That'd been huge.
That'd have been pretty crazy.
That'd been really huge.
Yeah, that'd been nuts.
And then apparently they wanted Dr. Death, Steve Williams. They signed him, brought him in to the company to win this, and he was knocked out.
And then if he was supposed to win it and go on and take on Stone Cold, the champion, like the biggest thing in wrestling, he was supposed to be a viable opponent for Stone Cold.
And this is supposed to be the kickstart of all that. Instead, they put him in a situation where,
Who did he fight in the Brawl for All?
I think it was Bart Gunn.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Where with one punch, you can be completely exposed. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And I think JBL said no one had any idea that Bart Gunn would be that good.
Which turns out he was really, really good.
Well, until he fought a real trained fighter. Lasted 36 seconds against Butterbean.
Oh, man.
This tournament didn't do anybody any favors.
It didn't do
Except it could have with Bart Gunn if they didn't have him fight Butterbean.
No, you know what? It did actually, because then Bart Gunn took the Brawl for All, and went to Japan and had a good career.
Decent career, that's true.
So, I mean, it actually did help him quite a bit, but it didn't do it. And like, if you take the one pro that it helped Bart Gunn in Japan, and then you weigh that with all the cons.
I mean, it pretty much led to the end of Dr. Death's career.
Yeah, pretty much.
He hurt himself.
Yeah.
There was that. I mean, I guess JBL did okay afterwards, but I think I read somewhere that a vast majority of the field was out of the company within a couple of years of the tournament. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody was gone.
Yeah. This is what we need to do our next tape trade series on. If we take it direct to Patreon, we kind of just do one by one Brawl for
All. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We could do a couple per episode because most of the matches are pretty. Because like so many of the matches too is like it's just bad fumbling around fighting and they go to decision and it's boring. I remember watching this all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's just boring, horrible, bad boxing.
Yeah,
people just throwing punches wildly, not connecting.
The funny thing is, so like the idea itself is kind of fascinating. Until you just really think about it, which they didn't do. It's
now,
like,
if they did something like this, sorry to interrupt you, rather than do some sort of mutant boxing UFC type deal, what if Vince Russo had seen like Pancrase and said, okay, let's do a fighting thing where we'll use, to a certain extent, pro wrestling moves in a shoot fashion.
Yeah.
The risk of injury is exceptionally high, as you've seen from any Minoru Suzuki Pancrase compilation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they'll put some limits to protect the talents. But something more like that would seem more in the wheelhouse of many of these wrestlers as opposed to a boxing match.
You know what they should have done is instead of Brawl for All, just have like a shoot softball match.
Oh, then Sid would have won.
Whoever has Sid on his team.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like one-on-one softball. You can't really do that.
Well, that's batting practice.
Like divide the locker room up into all the tough guys in the locker room. Divide them up into two, and there you go. Mm. But yeah, no, it'll be fun to watch those again.
Yeah.
Number 7.
7.
WrestleMania 9.
Well, I think this is more of a larger thing where you have this new generation that Vince apparently really wants to do. He wants to phase out what made WWF popular in the 80s and focus on younger talent. However, the transition was bumpy to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, we've heard about Macho Man wanting to get in the elongated program with Shawn Michaels. Mm-hmm. 2-year storyline eventually put him over. really would have done a lot. I mean, not that Shawn Michaels had any difficulty getting to the top of the card in his career.
Yeah.
But having that feud under his belt would have been something else.
Yeah.
And then you talk specifically about the finish WrestleMania 9, where Hogan just did not want to put over Bret Hart. Again, more or less on his way out the door.
Yeah.
Because he didn't feel like he was legit.
The transition to the new generation was ill-executed, to say the least. I think that's really what the entry is the execution of the new generation.
I mean, because typically what you do is when people are on their way out, they put over the incoming or the new talent. That's just kind of how it works.
You use the popular. It makes total sense. You use popular, well-known wrestlers to get over, to lose to up-and-coming wrestlers who have a bit of a. Bret Hart was a well-established wrestler at this point. Shawn Michaels was a well-established wrestler at this point.
Undertaker also was more or less a well-established wrestler.
Well-established. And it's kind of striking to see, like, WrestleMania 9, just how many people that were at WrestleMania 9 by the following WrestleMania, even by SummerSlam maybe, were gone from the company. Like, Hogan left in June. I don't.
Beefcake probably left around then too. I would suspect, since he and Hogan were so close at the time.
Yeah, but talk about specifically the ending, because I want to look this up really quick.
So the main event of the show was supposed to be Rumble winner Yokozuna taking on Bret Hart for the WWF title. They had a match. Yokozuna cheated to win, and Hogan comes out to protest this injustice perpetrated onto Bret Hart. And how does he undo this injustice? He gets himself a title match.
Yeah.
And ultimately wins the WWF title to close the show.
Now, according to Bret Hart, he was supposed to finally wrestle and beat Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam, and then of course we saw what happened a month or 2 months before SummerSlam. Hulk Hogan just decided to leave.
Yeah, he did not want to put over Bret for whatever reason. And it just seemed like, if you want to really establish this new generation of talent, give them that aura of legitimacy they probably need to carry forward, in this new era. You need the old guard to pass the torch, and that never really happened.
Yep. So yeah, I'm looking at WrestleMania 9 versus SummerSlam, which obviously happened about 4 months later. Let's see here. I mean, Ted DiBiase was still there. It's probably better to look at 9 and 10 in terms of a direct side-by-side, but obviously Hogan wasn't there. I mean, that's funny. Oh, SummerSlam? Oh, that's funny. I didn't know Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez had a rematch at that SummerSlam.
Yeah.
That's funny. Hold on. How long was that match? It was an 8-minute match.
Oh, man.
Wow. They really went Iron Man with that, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
But yeah, I mean, that was sort of the big thing. It's like, okay, Bret's going to be your next big thing. He's going to be your guy who's going to, talk about an awkward passing of the torch. It was just not great. Not a great way to do it.
Basically non-existent.
Yeah. Number 6. The anonymous Raw general manager.
So this debuted June 21st, 2010 on Raw, unveiled by Vince after he fired Bret Hart, who was the previous general manager. And as we saw so many times, the sound from your iPhone would ring through the arena. Michael Cole would step to the podium and read an email from the anonymous Raw general manager on a laptop that was stationed on said podium. This just kind of carried on for a year, more or less, just for no reason.
And none of it, if you were actually to try to put the pieces together in terms of who was
the clues they allegedly left,
it was there was literally ruled out everybody.
Yeah,
there was nobody it could be. I know Kevin Nash said at one point he was supposed to be the anonymous, and I think he was in TNA when they asked him, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And his contract was going to be up soon or something like that. And but it never panned out. But I guess maybe early on, I mean, I don't want to go back and retrace every decision the anonymous general manager made, but the decisions would have pointed maybe to him. And then at a certain point when they just had zero idea, they just used it for whatever convenient thing they wanted to use it, whether it was heel or face or whatever. There was zero consistency because they simply didn't know what they were going to do.
And then the Anonymous Raw GM returned in July of 2012 when it was revealed that Hornswoggle was the Anonymous Raw GM. This whole time, apparently, Kevin Eck, used to be a WWE writer, said there, as was plainly obvious, they had no idea who the Anonymous Raw General Manager was going to be. And then Hornswoggle was suggested as a joke because he was Vince's illegitimate son.
Yeah.
And wow, did that storyline go over well?
Yeah, exactly. So, WWE, it's funny because they'll do these things. They'll like set up mysteries, like like you said, the Vince's illegitimate son thing. These sort of soap opera-esque mysteries, and they almost never work out. I mean, in one instance, just this past summer, it worked out. It was pretty cool. Who killed Aleister Black? Who killed him? Who attacked Aleister
he was different
Black.
For that one. That was on NXT, not on WWE.
Exactly though.
And they probably knew from the very beginning who the attacker was going to be.
They did. I guarantee you they
followed
did.
through on that.
I guarantee you they did. And with WWE, they'll launch themselves into these storylines, and they time and time again they never get the gist. They don't know. They don't do that well.
No. Try as they might.
But I think we're kind of out of that era of goofiness. I hope so.
Although we just had the Jason Jordan Kurt Angle storyline.
Oh my God, that's right, we did.
So
that was terrible.
I'm not sure we're out of that yet.
Yeah. Number 5.
5.
Katie Vick. Dear. So as we mentioned in the previous century, WWE is no stranger to soap opera-esque storylines. The aforementioned Vince's illegitimate son thing, which ended up being Hornswoggle, but I know for a time it was supposed to be one of the more obvious answers, which was Mr. Kennedy.
I think they actually addressed that on television too.
They addressed
that Kennedy was and then wasn't Vince's illegitimate son.
Oh, they did?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that. What, like during the storyline?
Yeah, I think so.
I know that Vince had I remember there was a lineup of people that were supposedly possible suspects for being his son, and Vince was going past each one, and I think he came to Mr. Kennedy, and then they were like, nope, it's not you, and then they get landed on Hornswoggle or something. But yeah. But anyways, the worst of all these, and the one that actually caused like a stain on the WWE for years afterwards, was the Katie Vick storyline. Now, this website, iwnerd.com, has an article.
Oh, sorry. I guess at one point Mr. Kennedy claimed that he was.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
So this, I'll post the link in the description. They have a pretty good breakdown. It actually only lasted about 3 weeks.
There's no mention here of that interview that Triple H did after the video, where he was watching the video with whoever was interviewing him and laughing about it.
Oh, okay.
Remember that? We watched that together.
Yeah, we watched that. So on the October 7th, 2002 episode of Raw, I'm taking this directly from this article, Triple H takes out Kane's tag team partner, the Hurricane, backstage. This left Kane alone to defend his tag team titles in the main event. He's able to win the match, but he's interrupted by Triple H, who claims he knows Kane's secret, and he asks him if the name Katie Vick rings a bell. Now, I kind of remember watching live and remembering, oh, God, they're doing something stupid right now. Because whenever they come up with this made-up name and, oh, let's explore your past, and on top of that, it's with Kane, who's supposed to be a demon from hell. So anyways, Triple H claims that 10 years prior, Kane killed her, and he calls him a murderer.
The following week, Kane drops a promo giving his side to Triple H's story. Says he went out one night with Katie to a party. She had too much to drink. He drove her home. An animal got in front of the car. He swerved off the road. Kane suffered a broken arm. However, Katie was killed instantly. But he said it was an accident. And then Triple H comes out and says, no, Kane, you were drinking that night too. And this is terrible. And then Triple H says that there was an autopsy and found Kane's semen
inside of her.
Yeah.
And that Kane was in love with her.
Yeah.
And then a week after that, Triple H showed some video footage of Katie Vick's funeral. I think that was the thing. I think that was maybe the backstage thing where they come back from it and Triple H is watching the TV with the interview.
I didn't know if that was in the same week or a different week.
I think that was the same time. So he shows video footage.
It's Triple H wearing a Kane mask, and then he proceeds to fornicate.
Have sex
yes.
with the body. He and he says, I did it. I can't believe I did it. I screwed your brains out.
And they cut to him, and he's laughing about it.
Well, and then he pulls up like some fake brains from the fake head,
Gosh.
and then they cut back to him, and he's cracking up, which was the funniest part of the whole thing. The idea that the character Triple H would find this hilarious. It's actually kind of funny. So, anyways,
a week went by. WWE got a lot of shit,
a lot of complaints
for the storyline. And I guess they decided to double down on it instead. Triple H brought a mannequin down to the ring, a mannequin of Katie, and then started insulting fans for taking offense.
Mm-hmm.
Hurricane comes down, shows some footage where from a hospital or something, a person wearing a Triple H mask is removing or having items removed from their rear end.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this makes Triple H mad. He attacks the Katie Vick mannequin. Kane comes down. And Eric Bischoff makes a casket match as main event that episode of Raw. Turns out Shawn Michaels is inside the casket. He helps Kane win, and then I guess this was used to further the Triple H Shawn Michaels feud.
Yeah,
and the whole thing with Kane just dithered away,
fizzled away. So yeah, and then ever since then, a lot of people point that as one of the creative low marks in WWE's.
It was really
history.
bad.
It was really, really bad. Really bad. But, WWE, they're prone to do that from time to time.
Oh,
Have a real stinker.
Oh, yeah.
One of those writers will get an idea, or Vince will get an idea, and they'll run with it.
And it'll be awful.
It'll be awful.
Awful.
Enter Baron Corbin. Number 4. The Nexus. Man, Larson, we've got this great crop of young talent who are making a name for themselves. They got a cool logo. Let's push them to the moon.
They got a well-spoken, charismatic leader in Wade Barrett. Great promo guy, tons of charisma.
They have Ryback.
For a day, they had Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
Heath Slater.
Yeah.
Darren Young. David Otunga.
Now, this was a really, really, really clever way to debut a new crop of talent. Of course, there was the NXT show, which at the time, that was when it was a
competition show.
A competition show. So you had rookies and their mentors or their pros, whatever.
Yeah.
And season 1 goes down. And so, the WWE Universe, who's like more hardcore, because that aired on USA, I think.
Sci-Fi.
Sci-Fi, okay.
You replaced ECW.
So people would watch it. And so they kind of knew who these guys were. And then all of a sudden they show up on Raw June 7th.
The idea of the NXT was they have all these competitors. Only one would win a WWE contract. And that was Wade Barrett. He won season 1. And then the idea was that everybody else was on their own.
Yeah. So June 7th, 2010, all the contestants sort of banded together as a faction. They're all having this. They have this N logo on their shirts. They come out during this John Cena CM Punk match, and they just destroy everything. And it is a fantastic sight. It's exciting. It's energetic. The crowd is stunned. Daniel Bryan literally chokes the ring announcer. What's his name? Justin Roberts.
And I guess he spit on John Cena too.
Ooh.
Yeah, he was let go after that.
Yeah, he was let go until SummerSlam for that one. And then the camera just faded to black. There was no commentary. It was just kind of disturbing. It was really cool.
It was pretty neat.
It was a really great way to get this going. They feuded with John Cena. The Nexus did throughout the summer of 2010. Cena at one point was forced to join the Nexus.
That was after the SummerSlam match.
Oh, that's right.
So you had Nexus versus Team WWE match at SummerSlam, where originally Wade Barrett was supposed to go over.
Yeah.
Nexus is supposed to win. I guess Cena decided he didn't want to do that. So he talked to Vince. Ending was changed.
Now, according to Wade Barrett, who was recently on a live, they do Inside the Ropes does those live tours or those live shows, and Wade Barrett was on one of them. Stu Bennett, and he gave his rundown. He was like, "Yeah, I just we all knew the ending, in the lead up, Nexus is supposed to go over, making a bunch of big stars. And then we get there day of, and I'm told by, I think it was Arn Anderson.
That sounds right.
That they've changed the ending, that they're going to, or that he just tells them the ending and Cena goes over. And so Justin Gabriel and Wade Barrett try to track Vince down. They do, and he explains to them, Cena's going to win this. And so they kind of just speculated, Cena just, he said Cena wins now.
Yeah.
So after that, it took the wind out of the Nexus. It really did.
And they tried to keep the storyline going. They did have Cena join the Nexus after he lost to Wade Barrett at Hell in a Cell. But like the whole time, especially between SummerSlam and when Nexus kind of fizzled out into two different factions, there was this constant infighting.
Yeah. You knew, like after SummerSlam, you just kind of knew. Even though like the Cena Nexus stuff was kind of fun after SummerSlam, again, you're just focusing solely on John Cena.
I know.
And the whole point at that point was just have John Cena dispatch of these bad guys. And as opposed to let's build them into something really cool.
So, you had Daniel Bryan get fired after their initial appearance. And then he comes back on SummerSlam and joins Team WWE. Mm-hmm. Ryback breaks his ankle, I think.
Yeah.
He's out for a couple years.
Yeah.
So you have him out. And then, someone else got hurt too. Mm-hmm. So there's injury problems. And then storyline-wise, there's all sorts of infighting. And then Cena literally buried Wade Barrett under 16 chairs to win the TLC match between them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, which led to Barrett being kicked out of the Nexus.
Yeah.
And so you had the Nexus splinter into two groups. You had the core, which featured basically half the Nexus, led by Wade Barrett. And you had the new Nexus, led by CM Punk.
Which was simply a vehicle for CM Punk to do way cooler things, which he did. If you'll recall, he was wearing the Nexus armband, I think, during his pipe bomb.
Yep.
And then very shortly after that, he just disassociated.
Yep.
It just fizzled out. So yeah, but it kind of makes you wonder, like, Wade Barrett, man, he was a star in the making. And then after that, and then after, a lot of different things with him, it was just kind of obvious that I wasn't going to work out with him in the WWE, which is unfortunate. I really liked him. I thought he was great.
Yeah, he had a lot of potential. He had some, not there's ever a good time for an injury, but 3 instances where he was in the midst of a decent push and got hurt, unfortunately.
He would get hurt, but also like, it just wasn't the same. Mm-hmm. I liked this Bad News Barrett thing. That was cool. Number 3. Roman Reigns. This is the biggest creative blunder, certainly of the modern era.
Yeah, it's up there for sure.
Here's the thing. It's amazing to see somebody Vince wants somebody to get pushed so much, and yet take for literally almost 4 years, for 3 years at least, almost every wrong move available they make.
Yep.
And here's the thing. Crazy thing about Roman Reigns is that fans totally want, look, it's different now, obviously. He's battling leukemia. He's going to get, whenever he does return, and I hope he does, he's going to get like an amazing response, and they will give him a very long honeymoon. But eventually, if they continue to get his creative wrong again, once he comes back, the same thing's going to happen. It's kind of crazy. The Shield were a massively successful, very popular group.
Super over. And during the Rumble in 2014, when Reigns was still a member of Shield, the one Daniel Bryan wasn't in.
Yeah.
If he had won that Rumble, because he had a heck of a performance, he eliminated like 12 people or something like that.
Yeah.
If he had won that Rumble, the crowd would have popped.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, now I've literally like sort of noted every major beat here between the Shield's breaking up. For example, we can take that in the first place. Now, granted, it did lead to a really fun Seth Rollins run, but you've often noted if they had simply run with Reigns turning on the group and being the plan B, what one thing we know from history is that really, really strong heel runs can easily transition into a very, very effective face turn.
Yep.
In this case, instead we got it with Seth Rollins.
Well, another issue with that too was the feud that happened immediately, pretty much following Seth turning on the Shield, was not Seth Reigns; it was Seth Ambrose.
Seth Ambrose, exactly. And it was striking in that between the summer of 2014 when the Shield broke up and then just 6-7 months later at the Rumble 2015, the fans were super savvy with just how much Roman Reigns was being shoved down our throats. He would win time after time after time. He was immediately inserted into main event after main event after main event, and in the most boring way possible. He never had any real form of struggle between the summer of 14 and the Rumble 2015, which of course led to him winning the Rumble 2015. That was the one where he won after taking a long snooze after being taken out
by the League of Nations.
And even that Rumble match alone, look, you can have a guy who people are super against. And in the course of one Rumble, if they come out early and they last a really long time and they do a lot of cool stuff, by the end of that match, the crowd will be behind that person.
No, Rumble 2015 is not when he got laid out. That was 2016. That was the Triple H one where he got laid out. 2015, he won.
Okay. So he got laid out. Okay, he got
2016 by League of Nations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. 2015. I thought the one that he won was there. Okay. I don't have it on the top of my head, but I'm sure he didn't have that great of a performance in 2015.
Carry on. I'll look.
All right. So anyways, 2015, regardless of what happened, at the end, even The Rock showing up with Roman Reigns didn't help him.
Well, here's another issue that hampered him during that time is that Vince was running him a bunch of horrible promos.
Oh, and that's right. I was trying to remember like all the stuff so he came out at 19.
19, lasted about a half hour, eliminated 6 people.
Okay.
He had the most eliminations. Right. He wasn't the Iron Man. That was Bray Wyatt. But he had a strong showing.
Yeah. So I'm just assuming that the writing was just so on the wall with him. I'm trying to remember exactly how it turned so bad for him so quickly.
Well, I kind of remember at the time you'd hear week after week, day after day reports, Vince is really intent on pushing Roman Reigns. And a lot of wrestling fans today are more well-informed and savvier than they were even 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So when they read this, Vince really wants Reigns to be top guy. And, then I think there's a portion of the fan base like, well, no. Especially after what happened with Daniel Bryan, where Daniel Bryan was the fans' choice to be top guy, and the company resisted at every turn, basically, if all the reports be believed, before they finally gave in and gave Daniel Bryan the main event spot at WrestleMania 30. Especially after that, hearing the reports of, Vince really wants this guy to be the face of the company. And I guess some portion of the fan base is like, well, what about I have no say in this?
Yeah, but also just in the booking of him.
That did him no favors.
I remember there was just. I mean, the thing is, like right now, it's if Vince wants, for example, Seth Rollins to be top guy right now. Okay, it seems pretty obvious. Man, they put him through the ringer. They have him do all sorts of cool stuff. They had him win just like 6 months ago, whatever it was in 2018. Or he didn't win it, but he had that hour-long performance in the Gauntlet match.
That was almost a year ago.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's
very memorable, though.
Oh yeah, no, but it didn't seem like it's been that long.
I know.
The time frame.
But he's also like he puts in all the work. And granted, Roman Reigns is a good wrestler, but also you get this stuff. His promos come off as very genuine, and you made a good point about. I remember that time when Vince McMahon, seemingly on a weekly basis, was writing all these really bad promos,
suffering succotash, lines and stuff like that.
And it just didn't come off as genuine.
No,
that was the thing. The entire run, even if people didn't know behind the scenes what was going on, the entire run didn't seem genuine.
No,
nothing felt genuine about it, and there never felt to be any real struggle there.
No.
Mania 2015, Rollins cashes in, crowd goes crazy. Even though that match with Lesnar was actually a pretty decent one to that point.
Yeah, they're telling an interesting story.
I can understand. Obviously, you have to make the decision sometime before the match happens. They couldn't have said, hey, this match is good. Let's just change the finish to WrestleMania.
I know.
On the fly. I wouldn't put it past Vince, but they didn't do that.
No, they didn't.
Rollins cashes in. WWE sort of punts on Roman Reigns being the guy once again. November of 2015, Reigns wins the title at Survivor Series. And then, in what was actually a really cool moment, beats up Triple H, and he gets a big pop at that before being cashed on by Sheamus. At TLC, Sheamus beats him due to interference and stuff. And then, maybe that was when he...
That was when he beat up Triple H.
That's when he beat up Triple H big time. I think he punched him at Survivor Series or something. But then he like just destroyed Triple H.
He speared him all sorts of different
at
times.
TLC, and that got a massive, massive pop. The next night on Raw, he won the title back, and he either punched Vince at that point.
Yeah, he punched Vince.
Okay. And that, again, tons of struggle during that match. All sorts of people were trying to interfere with him, and he responded with aggression, with violence.
Well, that's
what people want to see.
Not only did he win that night, it was in the same building. He was booed following his win at Rumble 2015, Philadelphia, Wells Fargo Center.
Exactly. And then he loses the title in the Royal Rumble match. Well, they put the title up for grabs in the Royal Rumble match.
2016, and we got laid out by League of Nations.
And then he lost it to Triple H as opposed to like a cooler proxy like Brock Lesnar, as you've suggested before. And then Triple H kind of makes Roman earn it. Like he starts crotch chopping and trying to play kind of cool Triple H. And then their match is just terrible at Mania. Wasn't really good. And then just the next 2 years, with a couple exceptions, for example, Finn winning the Universal title. He had the brand split.
Well, yeah, that's that period of time when he was champion, lost it to Seth at Money in the Bank when Dean cashed in on Seth. Mm-hmm. And you learn afterwards that Roman failed the wellness policy test and was suspended for a month.
Yeah.
Came back. Won the U.S. title, had a decent program with Rusev for the U.S. title.
Yeah.
And, it was all eventually though, to kind of build him back up to get back into the Universal title scene. Just took forever. He was Intercontinental Champion for a while. And, it seemed like at last WrestleMania, they were finally going to do it. Mm-hmm. Brock wins. Okay, it's got to happen at Greatest Rumble. Brock wins.
Yeah.
And they wait
a really silly cage match.
Yeah. And then they wait all the way to SummerSlam in 2018 and have Braun out there ringside pretty much with the Money in the Bank briefcase saying, hey, this is getting cashed in at some point in this match. It distracts Brock. Although Brock did throw that briefcase all the way up to the top of the ramp. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, it was pretty neat.
But it wasn't so much Reigns' strength as a competitor that beat Brock.
It wasn't a coronation.
No, it was Braun's distraction.
It was a fast one.
Yeah.
They pulled a fast one.
It was like a bait and switch on all of us.
It really was.
Because they have Reigns win and they just go, all right, show's over, bye. Mm-hmm. So you don't get the chorus of boos. You don't get to see Reigns posing in the turnbuckle with his belt. They just end the show.
Yeah.
And they end the show on a long shot where you just have Braun trying to get up against the barricade up by the ramp.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty bad. So they never had their big coronation moment.
Nope.
People, I think at that point, though, they were just sort of happy to have that title off Brock. And so I think the next night on Raw, they were cheering Reigns. I think.
Yeah, it was all right.
Or at least they were satisfied that it wasn't Brock.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't mention here when he beat Undertaker.
Oh,
at
yeah.
Mania, the next night on Raw. It was the loudest chorus of boos I have ever heard.
Yeah.
It was insane.
It was like from the brand split, essentially, from 2016, which right at that moment was when he was doing his wellness policy suspension thing. They had Finn beat him. That was like his punishment. Give me U.S. title. That was his punishment. It always felt like this sense of inevitability that eventually was going to be leading to Roman again.
Yep. He
was always sort of hovering there. Like, I think the original plan was for Finn to lose to Brock to have the title, and then Roman was supposed to beat Brock for it. And it was years, literally years, where the main title on the main show was just sort of held hostage.
Yeah.
It was very silly. So, yeah. And it's at any number of these times, they could have done something different and it would have worked.
Yeah. Oh, entirely possible.
Number 2.
Oh, sorry, before you continue. They were still really trying to capitalize on Brock beating the Undertaker streak at Mania.
Yeah.
And having Reigns beat Brock, so Reigns in a way would get the streak.
Yeah. Yeah. They even went so far as to having Reigns beat the Undertaker too.
Which made the whole, beating Brock for the streak kind of obsolete.
Yeah. Number 2.
2.
The women's division from 1984 to 2013. Look at that, man. Vince is making Trish bark like a dog. Anyways, Larson, it's kind of crazy that from 1984, which I mentioned because that's when the WWF bought Fabulous Moolah's women's title, which they had sort of used as their own women's title because she never lost it.
But in fact, they had her picture on it.
It had her picture on it, literally. I wonder how much they paid for that.
I'm sure the information's out there somewhere.
Probably. In any event, from 1984, with a few exceptions, until 2013. Basically, I pegged the moment when AJ Lee won the title because she was known as a pretty decent wrestler.
Oh, she was really good, yeah.
And she sort of marked a turning point. She had that great little sort of pipe bomb-ish moment on sort of the Divas thing. I thought that was pretty strong. And then after her, it was just a succession of really good
The following
names.
year, I believe, is when Paige made her debut.
Paige made her debut.
AJ Lee for the title.
And then we're right into the women's revolution. But here are some of the lowlights.
Well, first, let's talk about some of the really good talent that was wrestling in this period. You had Lita and Trish, obviously.
Sure, yeah.
Alundra Blaze, Medusa, Chyna, Beth Phoenix, Victoria was really good. Molly Holly was a good wrestler.
Yeah, I mentioned them here later on.
Yeah, Jazz, Gail Kim, Mickie James, all really, really good wrestlers. All great wrestlers.
Yeah. Let's just take this bit by bit, though. First of all, we had in 1985 Wendy Richter, who actually her and Cyndi Lauper, I mean, obviously mainly Cyndi Lauper, helped usher in the women's era of rock and wrestling. But then in 1985, we had that fabulous moolah Wendy Richter screw job, where apparently Wendy Richter. There is two different sides to this story, but it all had to do with her contract. Vince wanted her to sign some sort of extension. She claimed she was still in the midst of a 5-year deal, but wanted more compensation or something like that. And in any event, they got that title off her in very shady fashion. What's called the original screw job, Madison Square Garden, as a live event. So that happened in 1985. 1999 was a particularly bad year for the women's title. You had Deborah, who's not really a good wrestler.
Oh, she's not.
I should just put, she's not a wrestler.
Yeah, she wasn't a wrestler.
Winning the title over Sable, who again, like wildly popular.
She had a good power bomb.
She had a decent power bomb, but Deborah won in an evening gown match over Sable in 1999. Also in 1999, Fabulous Moolah had another run with it at the age of 146 or whatever. The Cat won it in 1999 in an evening gown pool match. I'm not sure if that's the one where she went topless. Harvey Whippleman won it in 2000 as Hervina. Stephanie McMahon had it. So, March 5th, 2001, Trish Stratus was forced to bark like a dog to Vince McMahon.
A lot of stuff during the Ruthless Aggression era when Vince was prime lecherous Vince is embarrassing to watch.
Yeah, but also around that time, also from August 2000.
Yeah, there's a lot of good too.
To 2007, a bunch of names you already mentioned. There's actually a lot. Like I looked at a lot of the stipulations for those title changes, and I didn't see any evening gown matches, bra and panty matches. You don't see a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, the salacious stuff they kept the backstage segments with Vince.
They kept out of the title scene. Yeah, basically. For the most part. But yeah, you mentioned Mickie James, Victoria, Molly Holly, Gail Kim, Jazz.
Yeah, all
bunch
great
of great
wrestlers,
champions. Yeah. Then we get that stretch.
We should have mentioned Jacqueline too.
Yes,
during the Attitude Era. She was awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. She was great. Then we had that stretch of sort of the Divas Championship era.
Well, it's when they had both the Women's Champion on Raw, I think, and the Divas Championship on SmackDown, and they got rid of the Women's Championship and just made the Divas Championship.
Yeah, they unified them, and then you had people like Candice Michelle McCool, Kelly, Layla, Maurice, and the Bellas. And I know, people have their opinions, positive or negative, about all those names, but none of them were terrifically good wrestlers. They just weren't. And then you get to 2013, AJ Lee wins it from Caitlyn, and then you're off to the races. And just finally, over the past 3 years, they understand the significance of women's wrestling and what it can do for the company.
Yep.
But a long time, they didn't.
No.
And they treated that division like a doggy doo-doo. So, and that's an absolute shame.
It is.
Let's get to the number one.
1.
Austin's heel turn and the invasion.
Yeah, it's all kind of one story. So, we all know Stone Cold Steve Austin turned heel at the conclusion of WrestleMania 17, shaking the hands of his bitter rival, Mr. McMahon, after hitting The Rock over the head with a chair, chair that was given to him by Mr. McMahon. And probably the greatest, to that point at least, rivalry in wrestling history was no more.
Yeah.
Now they were in an alliance. And pretty much instantly, ratings went right in the toilet.
Yeah.
Because people didn't want to see heel Stone Cold. They wanted Stone Cold.
Yeah.
They wanted middle fingers and stunners, particularly to one Mr. McMahon.
Yeah, man.
But Austin at that point felt his character was becoming a bit stale, and apparently he just liked working heel, which makes sense. It seems like heels get to have more fun.
Yeah, sure.
Totally understand why performers want to work heel. And so he pitched Vince on a heel turn leading up to WrestleMania 17 because, as he said it, Vince didn't have anything huge planned for WrestleMania. At WrestleMania, huge things happen. One issue, though, is that WrestleMania took place in Houston, Texas. And where is Steve Austin from?
Texas.
Texas, correct. So, I mean, he turns heel in his home state.
Yeah.
And winning the title, too.
Yeah, dude, you watched that live?
Yeah.
I remember just feeling really bummed out.
It was confusing.
It was
The match was great.
Yeah, it was a really great match.
And then you think to yourself, why the hell would Austin shake Vince's hand? It's confusing. It doesn't make any sense.
Like immediately weakened him. It was like, oh, really? I remember thinking, oh, really? Because it's not good. Like immediately you knew it wasn't going to be good.
Yeah, I know.
And it turned out not to be good.
Well,
I mean, there were some good comedic bits.
Well, then you got his alliance with Triple H, 2-man power trip.
That was kind of cool.
That was decent.
That was okay.
They had all the belts.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then Triple H tore his quad in that great match on Raw, the tag title match. So Austin was by himself, and he went through this weird period where all he wanted was Vince's validation. And it led to a lot of really funny comedic bits between Kurt Angle, himself, and Vince. Remember that one shot of him just wanting a hug from Vince, and Vince finally gives it to him, and the look on Stone Cold's face is hilarious.
It was priceless. It was
so good.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Stone Cold.
Yeah.
It wasn't the Stone Cold.
It was just
everybody
missing.
Kind of wanted.
Missing, yeah.
And it's during this time they started doing the what?
Yeah.
Which unfortunately people still chant during wrestling shows.
I do that.
But then he eventually turned heel on Vince during the invasion to join the alliance.
Yes.
Because they didn't have any, barring a couple like Booker T and a couple other people, pretty much none of the other major players in WCW came to WWE following WWE's buyout of WCW because they were still getting huge chunks of money from their Turner contracts, and wisely so, weren't going to take pennies on the dollar to accept the buyout.
We should have actually just labeled this. My bad. 2001.
Pretty much.
Greatest creative blunder, because he had Austin's heel turn. And then you go into the invasion, which, like you said, was just a big, giant misfire.
Because you had Shane buying WCW, and so like the stars that came in to WWE from WCW at the time were Booker T.
He was the biggest star.
And there was a lot of younger guys.
And there was Booker T, and then like the Natural Born Thrillers.
Yeah.
and people like Kidman.
Yeah.
Like he came in, people kind of liked him. He was like a cruiserweight guy.
But then, I guess they realized they didn't have their ranks need to be bolstered. So Stephanie went out and bought ECW. And so they brought a bunch of ECW talents in.
Yeah.
So rather than just having a straight up Monday Night War battle played out in 2001 in a feud, it's kind of a weird amalgam of WCW and ECW taking on WWE, which really wasn't what the dynamic was during the height of the Monday Night War. It was primarily WWE and WCW, and if anybody was helping out ECW, it was WWF, because Vince was giving Paul Heyman money at periods in like 97 or something like that.
Yeah.
WCW would just sign up a bunch of ECW talent, but there was no like working relationship whatsoever.
Yeah.
Anyways, but by the end of the year, Stone Cold was face again after Survivor Series.
Yeah, they pretty much just dropped everything with regards to the invasion angle, and then they ended up splitting the brands, brought back a bunch of at Survivor Series it was WWE versus versus the Alliance.
Yeah.
WWE of course won thanks to Kurt Angle turning on the Alliance, and then at Vengeance 2001, which we did a going in review of.
Yeah, Jericho
recently,
won the undisputed title,
and then they sort of dropped all that other stuff. And then Austin only came back a handful of times. He went through his phase where he just was a malcontent, and had his retirement match at WrestleMania 19. That's right.
He left for a while because he didn't want a job to Brock Lesnar on free television.
Yeah. So 2001, and it reflected with the company as well. The ratings just sank, and all the milestones, all the financial goals that they wanted to hit, they didn't. And the high of the Attitude Era came crashing down.
Yeah.
To a low, and then they entered the ruthless
aggression era. I understand their idea that they want to do this invasion, this WCW versus WWE thing, especially fresh off the purchase of the company.
If they simply would have taken the long road,
but I understand the feeling like, oh, this is hot news now. We need to capitalize on it now. But if you just don't have the people to pull it off, it's going to be underwhelming. If you're going to have a real WCW invasion, and I know it's not ideal to wait to 2003 when a lot of those Turner contracts expire, but it's kind of what you need to do. You need Goldberg, you need the NWO, you need Scott Steiner, even on one foot.
Flair.
You need Flair.
Like, I don't know, they never would have gotten Sting. Well, no, Sting was close.
He was close to having a match at like WrestleMania 17 against Undertaker.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we had more of an invasion. We had more of a proper WCW versus WWE WrestleMania the next year, where you had the NWO, where you had Flair. But in terms of the invasion angle, for what it was supposed to be, WCW versus WWF, it's like, Marvel versus DC.
But it's like Marvel versus DC if DC bought up Valiant to help them out and take on Marvel.
If it was Marvel versus DC, but you couldn't use Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman.
Yeah.
You only had maybe
So instead
Aquaman.
You buy up Harbinger and Bloodshot. And
Quantum and Woody.
Yeah. Those properties to fill in for Superman and Wonder Woman.
Magnus Robot Fighter.
And you think, well, we'll bring in Captain America over from Marvel. He'll become a DC guy.
Right, exactly.
And that'll even the odds. It just didn't work out that way.
Oh, man, that's a great analogy. Ooh, that's obscure. So anyways.
Should I said Image Comics instead of...
No, Valiant was great. That's
right.
great. Because people who get that, they're going to be like, oh, my God, that's obscure. That's awesome. Anyways, that's it for our episode of Countout, Top 10 WWE Creative Blunders. Be sure to let us know what we missed in the comments below. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Remember Ninjak?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a name I was trying to remember.
Yeah,